One live.
Good morning. Recognizing a quorum of commissioners, I'll call the February 25th, 2025 meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission order. This meeting is being held remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and is being recorded. Commissioners Camargo, Roy, and myself are participating in today's meeting. All votes taken today will be by roll call. We have a short but an informative agenda today that I will generally summarize. We'll start with opening comments from commissioners, then commissioner discussion and votes. There are 2 items in the commission discussion and vote section today: administrative license renewal extension vote and the industry report. At the conclusion of those 2 agenda items, the commission will transition into executive session. I will ask that commissioners wishing to comment or ask questions during any part of the meeting raise their hand to be recognized. With those initial comments, I'll turn things over to commissioners for any comments or updates you may have. Commissioners will go in alphabetical order. I'll give my comments last. So we'll start with Commissioner Camargo. Good morning, Commissioner. Anything you would like to share this morning?
Thank you. My mouse is acting a little funny, so just FYI, because I stay off mute. But no, good morning and thank you, and looking forward to today's conversation.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Roy, good morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Very excited for today. And I want to just thank Dr. Johnson and her team, the research team, Alex and Graylin and Haley and Victoria. And you know, I've met with the research team a couple of times to review this report. I know this is part of our legislative mandate, but the time, the effort, and the energy that goes into this is outstanding. And this really, I mean, I learned a ton from reading this report. I know others will too. And you know, a lot of this is what is the rear view mirror stuff, like what has happened in the industry and all facets of it, from diversity to testing. So it's really great to read this and learn from this document, and I look forward to the presentation today. I also want to welcome, and you know, I speak about testing a lot, and a big portion of this report does touch on testing and where we've been and what's been going on in the industry. But I want to take this time to welcome our new director of testing. I had an opportunity to meet with Daniel yesterday, Daniel Weigand, and I was at headquarters yesterday, and I welcome him aboard, and we're really excited to have him. Testing is such a big topic in the cannabis industry, and just shared with him some aspirational things that I've talked about, whether it's standardization, a standards lab, certificates of analysis. So we had a great conversation. I know a lot of folks are eagerly awaiting, anticipating his arrival. He's here, and you know, and the reason I bring it up is because testing is in this report, and thank you to all that were involved in making this happen.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you for your comments. I'll just echo those, short of not having a chance to meet our new director of testing yet, but greatly appreciate the work of the research team to pull this report together. This is a critical area of function for the commission and the commission's work, both by what's required by statute, but also because I do think that Massachusetts does have a tremendous opportunity to be a leader in research. We know Dr. Johnson and her team present all over the country and at camera. And greatly appreciate the time and effort into this report and everything that kind of awaits us going forward as this industry continues to grow and mature. With that, we'll move on to commission discussion and votes. As you know, back on our meeting on the 13th, we talked about an administration, let me try it one more time, license renewal extension vote. I will apologize, as we were conducting that vote in public meeting. You might have recalled we had a little bit of a tech glitch, and I did not go back and collect Commissioner Camargo's vote appropriately. So if you'll mind me allow me to just kind of do a little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to read the motion again. I'll invite a first and a second. It has not changed since our meeting on the 13th, except that the effective date of this motion is obviously the date that we sought to take the original vote. So I would seek a motion in furtherance of previous motions regarding extensions for licensees voted on at the public meetings on August 11th, 2022 and on May 23rd, 2024. The Commission now moves to grant a further limited delegation of its authority under General Law, Chapter 10, Section 76J, and General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 6A, and General Law, Chapter 94I, Section 7, to permit the Chief of Investigations and Enforcement or their delegee discretion to approve additional extensions not to exceed an additional 240 calendar days in total for the exclusive purpose of host community agreement or host community agreement waiver compliance. Provided, however, any administrative extension granted to a licensee by this delegation of authority and the prior delegations of authority granted on August 11th, 2022 and May 23rd, 2024 shall not exceed 600 calendar days in total, and provided further that during an administrative extension, a licensee shall continue to comply with the Commission's requirements for licensure and shall be required to pay a prorated license fee to cover the extension. The effective date of this motion shall be February 13th, 2025. After saying that, do I have would you move that motion, Commissioner Camargo?
Is it me or him that's frozen?
You're not
Commissioner?
frozen.
Oh,
You're
okay.
not frozen.
Okay. I didn't hear your last comment, but I believe you asked, do I have a motion?
Would you move that motion, please?
So moved.
Commissioner Roy, would you second?
I'm going to second, and I apologize. I was the cause of the chaos when my computer crashed. So I'm going to apologize for that. So, and I'll gladly second.
Thank you, Commissioner. It still came back to me. I should have gone back, even though we had that brief delay, but thank you, Commissioner Roy. Motion been made and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Camargo.
Aye.
Could you say that again, Commissioner?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Roy?
Aye.
Great. And Commissioner Stebbins votes aye, 3 in favor, none opposed. Thank you, commissioners, for that little piece of housekeeping business. Next, we will move on to the industry report. Happy to include and invite Dr. Johnson to join us. Just as a reminder, obviously, at the conclusion of this report, we're more than happy to invite general commissioner comments following the presentation, but I've been asked that, any kind of detailed questions that you might have that might involve further work of the research team, we invite those questions to be emailed to our research department inbox for inclusion. This will ensure all questions are adequately addressed and comprehensively answered. Research has told me they'd love to have those questions in by March 11th, 2025, and the research team will assemble a formal Q&A document answering all commissioner questions and will submit to the commissioners 2 weeks following that request. So that deadline would be March 25th, 2025. So that just gives commissioners more of an opportunity to maybe ask some more detailed questions following the presentation and give our research team some time to analyze those questions and respond appropriately. So Commissioner Roy, go ahead.
Thank you. Does that mean we're precluded from asking any questions today?
No, I believe you're certainly able to make general comments and ask some questions, but
Okay.
Again, I defer to the research department and certainly invite them if they feel that they want to provide a more thorough and deeper explanation that they may ask you to submit those. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Camargo, go ahead.
Thank you. Commissioner Roy, thanks for the question. I know we had discussed it with Dr. Johnson before. Dr. Johnson, I didn't say in the beginning because I was just trying to get the meeting going, but thank you for putting this together, obviously, to your team. I know this is I've read this report a few times now, before the edits and now after the edits, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. I fell asleep with the report on me last night. So it's pretty lengthy. So I'm glad that we're going to have the discussion today, but also I just want to remind Dr. Johnson, because we had this conversation, but we ask a lot of questions and we ask questions on the spot. If you don't have the answer, like, it's okay. And feel free to push back on us and say, good question, but don't have the answer to that. I think Commissioner Roy and I love to ask questions. So just looking forward to the conversation, and thank you again. I see Alexander Colby here. I'm not sure if Alexander is still here. Graylin, Dr. Johnson, I know you have someone new on your team as well. I think her name is Catherine. But thank you to everyone on your team.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks, Commissioner. And Doctor, certainly, again, invite you to start your presentation. And if you want to introduce your team, I don't know who's joined us this morning, but if not, welcome you to start your presentation, and we'll make sure commissioners abide by the ground rules. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you. So good morning, Acting Chair, Commissioners, and Acting Executive Director. I'm excited to be here today. Today, I will be presenting on the 2025 Industry Report, which serves to assess both the medical use and adult use cannabis industries in Massachusetts, using available data from November 2018 through April 2024, except where otherwise noted. As Acting Chair Stebbins mentioned, please note that we're not going to do a live Q&A following the presentation, and that's to ensure that the answers that we provide you are absolutely 100% accurate and to the best of our abilities. Happy to take comments and and continue to meet with and get questions answered with commissioners after this and so forth. So we just want to make sure that we're giving you the best information possible, and I'm not just on the scene saying something publicly that may not be 100% accurate. Our research analysts are behind the scenes, they're listening, and they are absolutely amazing at what they do. And I think they're making sure I don't answer any questions wrong too. So thanks to my team. So following this, we'll have questions, and similar to past reports, we do an extensive Q&A document, which also goes live. So will be publicly available. These questions are anonymous from the commissioners, and they will be anonymously posted and answered on behalf of the Cannabis Control Commission's research team. So again, thank you for your time this morning. And so with all fingers crossed and no further delays, let's get into it. So seen here is a brief outline of the topics covered in the report that I will be discussing in today's presentation. I will start off by discussing the context surrounding this report, including the legislative research agenda items that this report satisfies, followed by a brief section discussing some scientific background on cannabis. Next, I will review the different sections discussing the data analyzed for this report, including data on adult and medical use establishments, production, product and sales, patients, testing, and agents, access, and equity. So as Commissioner Roy said, it really does cover a lot of basis, and I implore everybody to read the report because today will only be a very high-level synthesis. Next slide, please. So the legislative research agenda, next slide. So I first wanted to start by giving an overview of the portion of the legislatively mandated research agenda that this specific industry report serves to meet. This is a portion of our research agenda which we fulfill as a team within the Commission, independent of any other regulatory processes. We are an independent function, an independent body within the Commission, and we serve as an objective sounding block. This report serves to fulfill a number of statutory required research items, including items relevant to Mass General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 17, Research Agenda, Social and Economic Trends, and Public Health Impacts of Marijuana, which encompasses part of the Massachusetts Comprehensive and Multidisciplinary Cannabis Research Agenda. As seen here, Section 17A serves to help constituents and policymakers better understand the social and economic trends of cannabis in Massachusetts, including ownership and employment trends, as summarized in Section 4, and a market analysis, as summarized in Section 5. Secondly, this report covers items from Mass General Law 94G, Section 17B, which mandates that the Commission's research team report annually on items from this research agenda and make recommendations for further research or policy changes. Within this industry report, we cover these research agenda items by giving a high-level overview of several different data sets, including licensing, products and sales, employment and ownership, medical program patients, and product testing. It is important to note here that the research team continuously publishes peer-reviewed scientific manuscripts to assist in satisfying this robust research agenda. These scientific manuscripts contain analyses that are more complex and answer more specific questions than what is contained in this report, which is just summarizing our data and all of these metrics. Next slide, please. Right, so we'll head into background. Next slide. So prior to discussing the cannabis plant, a distinction must first be made between cannabis and cannabis hemp, as both belong to the same species of Cannabis sativa, but differ in their chemical compounds and effects as well as practical uses. Since the 2018 federal farm bill, which legalized hemp at the federal level, it has further complicated research on cannabis and non-synthetically derived cannabis products. Following the farm bill, there has been increase in significant interest in hemp's chemical constituents. Hemp is selectively bred to produce minuscule levels of delta-9 THC, with a standard threshold often set at less than 0.3% delta-9 THC to distinguish hemp from cannabis. Although hemp has low concentrations of delta-8 THC and delta-9 THC, hemp has other chemicals that it can also alter bodily states, most notably CBD. It is critical to note that this report solely uses data from the regulated medical and adult use cannabis markets. It does not include hemp-derived cannabinoids such as delta-8 THC, which are regulated by the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, not the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. So cannabinoids refer to a large array of biologically active compounds found in the cannabis plant and human body that bind to cannabinoid receptors in the endocannabinoid system. Endogenous cannabinoids, or endocannabinoids, are cannabinoids naturally produced within the human body, while phytocannabinoids are cannabinoids naturally produced within the cannabis plant, such as delta-9 THC. An additional subclassification of cannabinoids are synthetic cannabinoids, which are manufactured cannabinoids and not naturally occurring in the plant or within the human body. Two of the predominant compounds in cannabis are delta-9 THC and CBD. THC contributes to the cognitive effects, potential medicinal benefits, and substance use dependence potential. CBD, on the other hand, is non-psychoactive but has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant effects. THCA is the non-psychotropic acidic form of THC, and CBDA is the acidic form of CBD. THCA and CBD are the molecular precursors to THC and CBD. Next slide, please. All right, so now we'll get into a little bit of the methods of this report. So, as mentioned, the data timeframe for this industry report is from the inception and implementation of adult use retailers starting in November 2018, and the data goes through April 2024, except otherwise noted. This is important to note because in research studies, we have a defined timeframe, and so the data ends at April 2024. Data collected after May 2024 will be included in the next industry report that we hopefully do in 2027. The data sources and time frame table on the slide provide a full breakdown of the time frame and source of each data set. Data on licenses, product sales, and plant activity are centralized under the Open Data Catalog via Tableau server for regulation and monitoring purposes. This data is regularly updated and freely available to the public. Data related to agent demographics, patient demographics, and product testing were obtained via the Commission's Information Technology Department. Thank you to the ongoing collaboration from the IT data team, including the Chief Technology Officer, Paul Clark, Dr. Marion Sarkis, Director of Data Analytics, and Stephanie Thomas, Data Manager. You've been wonderful in this project, so thank you. Please note that some of the product testing data is now available on the Open Data Catalog. At the time of preparing this report and presentation, however, this included test results from THC and THCA from April 2021 through March 2024, the time when we have data to be analyzed. Next slide, please. So all data cleaning and processes were conducted in R and Microsoft Excel. Descriptive statistics were computed using R and Microsoft Excel. Data visualizations were constructed using R, Microsoft Excel, and Tableau Desktop. This report is a summary of Commission collected industry data. This is critically important to note for a legislative report crafted for a generalized audience, as the analyses for this report do not include any inferential statistics, hypothesis testing, or modeling that you'd see in publications for a more scientific audience. This report contains descriptive statistics such as mean, range, and standard deviation. Next slide, please. All right, so let's get into the data. Next slide, please. So marijuana establishments, or MEs, have increased and expanded across the Commonwealth from 2018 to 2024. As of April 30th, 2024, Worcester County had the greatest number of licensees that have commenced operations, followed by Middlesex County. Nantucket County and Dukes County had the fewest establishments. While the Commission is responsible for granting licenses, cities and towns differ in their consideration of cannabis businesses, approval processes, and bans for licensee operation within local jurisdictions. Additionally, in June 2024, the Commission made a historic move to permit cannabis to be transported to the islands to ensure adequate product supply to island establishments. This historic move by the Commission ensured that medical patients on the islands would not lose critical access to their medicines. Next slide, please. All right, so licensing. The table on the left here shows the number of licenses that have been approved to commence operations as of April 30th, 2024, and this is broken down by license type. There are 11 types of marijuana establishment license, including the 9 listed in this table, as well as 2 others, Craft Marijuana Cooperative and Marijuana Research Facility, which at the time, none had commenced operations during the study period. That has since changed. From April 24th, 2018, when the Commission received the state's first marijuana establishment application, through April 30th, 2024, the Commission approved 650 marijuana establishments to commence operations. The most common license types were marijuana retailers, marijuana cultivators, and marijuana product manufacturers, which together comprise 91.2% of all licenses that have commenced operations. The figure on the right shows the number of applications submitted and the number of licenses approved to commence operations from 2018 to April 2024. There were 1,747 applications submitted during this time period. Application submissions increased from 137 back in 2018 to a peak of 510 in 2020. There were only 49 submissions from January through April 2024. Next slide, please. To market saturation. Market saturation was calculated by looking at 2 separate data sources. The first one was retailer totals from the Commission's adult use and registered marijuana dispensary marijuana treatment center priority market data, and population estimate pulled by the American Community Survey, or ACS, compiled by the United States Census Bureau. This study reports on the 2023 ACS data reported on March 14, 2024, the most recently available data set at the time of reporting. Saturation estimates are measured using the number of retailers per 100,000 population for each of Massachusetts counties. Across all municipalities, there were an average of 5.1 marijuana retailers per 100,000 residents, with large variability across regions as seen on the table on the right. Saturation of cannabis retailers was highest in the western counties of Berkshire and Hampshire and was lowest in Norfolk and Middlesex counties. Density of retailers with RMD MTC priority were highest in Nantucket County and Hampshire County and lowest in Hampden and Norfolk counties. Next slide, please. So data production. Next slide, please. As you see, from January 1st through April 30th, 2024, an average of nearly 29,000 cannabis plants were legally produced or were currently in production per month in Massachusetts. This total represents all plants, excluding immature plants, that have been through flowering, vegetation, harvesting, and additionally includes plants that were destroyed. Of these, 72% had been harvested and 21% had been destroyed. For plants currently in production, 2% were currently in vegetation and only about 4% were in the flowering stage. As can be seen in the figure on the left, this average has greatly increased over time. Next slide, please. So data, products, and sales. Next slide, please. This slide shows totals for the adult use market. As seen in the figure on the left, sales from November 20th, 2018 through April 30th, 2024 totaled just over $6 billion, including a total of $524 million from January through April 2024. Buds accounted for the largest portion of sales across the entire time period, followed by vape cartridges and pre-rolls. As we can see in the table on the right, sales each year have continued to increase, although the pace of this increase has generally slowed over time. Year-over-year sales increased most from 2018 to 2019 by 347%. Note that this is only comparing sales in November and December of these years, as the first adult use retailers opened in November 2018. Year-over-year sales increased the least from 2022 to 2023 by only about 5%, but had a slightly higher increase of 7% from 2023 to 2024. Next slide, please. So product and sales and adult use price per gram. So now we look at the price per gram and price per ounce of cannabis flower in the adult use market. As seen in the figure on the left, the price per gram of cannabis flower calculated as a monthly average fell from just under $14 in November 2018, to $5.36 in April 2024. This is a 62% decrease. The price per ounce of cannabis flower shown in the table on the right similarly fell from just over $400 in 2018 to around $150 in 2024. And this is a 62% decrease as well. Other weight-based products showed similar trends in price per gram, with most products decreasing from their earliest prices to their average price in 2024. The average prices for products typically sold as discrete units, not by weight, also generally fell from 2018 to 2024. Some decreases are expected at the market saturation, as the market saturates all across the Commonwealth. We know this. As the price of cannabis decreases, additional adult use cannabis consumers in Massachusetts may end up entering the market, such as light cannabis users. However, as more East Coast states implement adult use cannabis legalization, Massachusetts may expect decreases in overall purchases as out-of-state consumers may no longer need to cross borders to purchase cannabis from Massachusetts specifically. Next slide, please. Products and sales. This slide gives an overview of product and sales in the medical use market. So this is exciting because this is the first time that we're presenting on the medical use market. Again, shout out to Dr. Marianne Sarkis for really pulling all of this together. It's no easy task. This slide gives an overview of products and sales in the medical use market. The figure on the left shows total accumulated sales from November 2018 to April 2024. During this time, the medical use of marijuana program transacted almost 1.3 billion in total sales. Over this time, Buds accounted for 592 million in total sales, or about 46% of all program sales. Infused edibles and beverages, as well as vape products, also accounted for large shares of the market, accounting for 30% of total sales. Year-over-year sales increased each year from 2018 to 2021, and then decreased for the first time from 2021 to 2022, with the trend continuing for 2023 to 2024. And this is comparing only the sales from January through April for 2023 and 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, so patients. This is really exciting because, again, this is the first time that we are presenting about patients who are using what they're using. Really exciting for us as a commission. So now we're, looking at registered patients in the medical program. As of July 31st, 2023, there were 99,622 patients with active registrations in the medical use of marijuana program, distributed across the entire Commonwealth, as seen on the figure on the left. The table on the top right displays the number of patients by age group. As you can see, the largest age group of patients was aged 36 to 45 years old. Only less than 6% of patients were under the age of 21 or over the age of 75. The pie chart on the bottom right shows patients' self-identified gender. 51% of patients identified as male and 48% identified as female, with 1% identifying as something else. Next slide, please. So patients' qualifying condition and age. So notable patterns emerged in patients' qualifying medical conditions. This figure shows the percentage of patients under each diagnosis category on the top, and broken down further into age category on the bottom. The most frequently reported qualifying medical conditions were mental or behavioral disorders, reported by 53% of patients. Prevalence was particularly high among young patients, with about 3/4 of patients under 21 reporting a mental or behavioral disorder. Prevalence declines with each successive age cohort and can be most visibly contrasted with adults aged 76 or older. By contrast, diseases of the musculoskeletal system and connective tissue and cancers were far more common among older patients than their younger patient counterparts. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now we will give an overview of the testing data. Consistent with other sections and with the purpose of this report, we provide only descriptive statistics, and visualizations. Analyses that are more complex, such as those involving inferential statistics or test for specific hypotheses, are critically important and might be addressed in future work, but they are outside the scope of this industry report intended for a wide audience. So with that being said, data was available from April 12th, 2021 through December 31st, 2023 for 3 test result types. As we discussed earlier, THC, THCA, and total yeast and mold, or TYM. THCA is the molecular precursor to THC. In other words, when cannabis is heated, THC then becomes THC. THCA becomes THC, which is then has a psychoactive effects. So therefore, total THC potency is based on the amount of both THC and THCA together. We excluded almost 40,000 results where the test comment field noted that a test had not been run, and the result had been entered only to satisfy metrics upload requirement. We also excluded 841 results where the test comment field indicating that the test was incomplete. A plurality of the excluded test results were total yeast and molds. It is probable that some unidentified null results still remain, which complicates analyses from a research perspective. The issue of default or null results arises when a licensed independent testing lab, or ITL, completes only a portion of required testing, but the metric system still requires the ITL to enter a result for all required tests. In these cases, the ITL typically enters a 0 for any test they did not run. This issue was partly addressed by a recent policy change by the Commission that disallows a la carte testing, where a licensee could have multiple ITLs, each complete a different portion of the required test. A licensee must now send one single sample to one single ITL to complete all required tests. These default nulls are not necessarily a problem for tracking regulatory compliance, but their presence necessitates extra work to identify and remove them before analyzing the data for research purposes. Following these exclusions, the dataset included over 350,000 results, which increased from over 71,000 reported in 2021 to nearly 150,000 in 223, as shown in the table. It is critical when reviewing the data to discuss its limitations. This data specifically has limitations for 3 primary reasons. First, Metric is an inventory management system, not a research data repository, and there are multiple entities that input data into Metric. Data from any such system are subject to limitations for research, including technical, human, and compliance concerns and errors. These limitations must be understood and addressed before more complex analyses can be conducted. Second, there can be some variation among ITLs in how they report results, even within regulatory compliance. For example, ITLs historically used different formula for combining THC and THCA to calculate total THC. The Commission addressed this issue by guidance in November 2023, requiring ITLs to now use the same specified formula. However, the use of different formula must still be accounted for in the analysis of potency data prior to this guidance. Another example, during the study timeframe, some ITLs made use of the comment field in Metric more so than others. The comment field can contain important information for research in their analyses, for researchers to look at the data in a more nuanced way for their analyses. And therefore, these different patterns of use must be accounted for in the data to have valid and reliable metrics. Third, policy changes can affect the data. In this case, the available data set, including results from April 2021 and later because testing requirements were modified in the first quarter of 2021. Next slide, please. So now we'll look at THC. Just over 100,000 THC results were reported from April 2021 to December 2023. As shown in the table on the left, reported THC results trended upward from a median value of 0.4% in 2021 to 0.6% in 2023. Again, these are very low percentages because these are results from tests conducted on the raw plant material. And the THC percentage in raw plant material is typically very low. When the plant is heated, the non-psychotropic cannabinoid acid, THCA, converts or decarboxylates into psychotropic THC. So we focused on the median here rather than the mean because the mean could be skewed on one end by abnormally low results, such as the default zeros mentioned before, and on the other end by a small number of abnormally high results. To the right is a density plot showing the distribution of results over time, with the date on the test on the x-axis, the result on the y-axis, and the darker blue indicating a larger number of reported results. The y-axis, for the researchers in the room, the y-axis is cut off at 20% so that the plot is able to clearly visualize most of the reported results. Here, 99.97% of results are 20% THC or lower. Abnormally high reported values for THC could appear for several reasons, including data entry errors, decarboxylation in the sample prior to testing, or potential manipulation of any kind. In any case, establishing a cause requires much more in-depth analyses, including multiple stakeholder collaboration to understand data, and specific content and methodological expertise, which is all outside the scope of this report. Next slide, please. Now we'll look at THCA. As described before, THCA is the non-psychotropic cannabinoid acid that is the molecular precursor to THC. Just over 100,000 THCA results were reported from April 2021 to December 2023. As shown in the table on the left, reported THCA results trended upward from a median value of 20.2% in 2021 to 24.1% in 2023. To the right is a density plot showing the distribution of results over time. The y-axis is cut off at 50%. The plot includes 99.98% of results. As with THC results, unexpected high reporting values for THCA can also appear for several reasons, and establishing a cause requires much more in-depth work and analysis to accurately understand the multiple factors impacting the seed-to-sale tracking data. Next slide, please. So we'll switch over to total yeast and molds. So in our system, total yeast and molds results are reported in colony forming units, or CFU, per gram. There were nearly 100,000 total yeast and mold results reported from April 2021 to December 2023. To the left is a table we've broken down the numbers by failing test results, then by passing results that are greater than 0 CFU per gram, and then by passing results of 0 CFU per gram to highlight the distribution of this data. As shown in this table, 9% of results across the entire time period were failing results and 91% were passing results. The percentage of failing results reported each year decreased from 10% in 2021 to 7.5% in 2023. Notably, the majority of results reported each year, 67% across all 3 years, were 0 CFU per gram. As previously discussed, some of these may be the default or null zeros, which weren't real test zeros. While the policy change described before largely addresses this problem for data going forward, further work to retroactively identify and remove those default or non-true zeros is critical for future analyses. To the right is a density plot showing the distribution results of over time. The y-axis is cut off at 100,000 CFU per gram, and the plot contains 97.1% of all reported results. Next slide, please. So agents, access, and equity. Next slide. So now we'll look at data for the demographics of cannabis industry registrations. I want to note that the unit of analysis here is agent registrations, which is somewhat higher than the number of people currently employed as agents in the industry, as individual agents may have multiple registrations, and the data set available to us at the time of preparing this report was stratified by registration. Further work across multiple teams will be required to do these analyses at the level of the individual agent versus the registration. However, Across all positions, general and senior level, just under 70% of agent registrations were identified primarily as white. The next largest race or ethnicity categories reported in singularity were Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish with 8.8% of registrations, and Black or African American with 6.6% of registrations, and individuals who identified as Asian made up just under 2% of registrations. So thinking about senior level agent registrations, 77.4% identified as primary white, 5.3% as Black or African American, 4.7% as Asian, and 4.4% as Hispanic or Latino. These results can be contrasted with the demographics of the agent registrations for general employees, among whom 68% identified as primary white, 10% as Hispanic or Latino, 7% as Black or African American, and 1% as Asian. Senior level agent registrations also saw a higher representation of men, accounting to 74% of registrations, compared to 61% of general employee registrations. Next slide, please. Agent access and equity. The racial and ethnic makeup of agent registrations also shows some trends when viewed by the year of application submission, as shown in the figure to the left. For instance, among agent applications in 2019, the first full year of adult use cannabis implementation in Massachusetts, white individuals made up 74% of the general employee registrations and 86% of senior level registrations. In 2019, Black or African individuals made up just 4% of general employee registrations and 3% of senior level registrations. And Hispanic Latino individuals made up 7% of general and 3% of senior level registrations. So these percentages changed from 2019 to 2023, with the percentage of agent registrations identified as white typically decreasing for both groups, and the percentage identified as Asian, Black, or Hispanic Latino generally increasing for each of these cohorts. These trends were more consistent among general employment and general employee registrations than among senior registrations, which may partly be explained by the much larger number of general employee registrations that we have. Similarly, the percentage of agent registrations identified as men decreased from 2019 to 2023 across both general employees and senior level agents, as shown in the figure on the right. In 2023, 62% of general employee registrations and 75% of senior level registrations were white. 9% of general and 7% of senior level registrations were Black, and Hispanic or Latino individuals made up 12% of the general employees and 5% of the senior agents. Next slide, please. Okay, so research and policy considerations. Next slide. So, as mentioned earlier in today's presentation and pursuant to Mass General Law 94G, Section 17B, the Research Department makes recommendations or considerations, in our wording here, for further research or policy changes. All research and policy considerations are created by the research team, and like our research agenda, they are independent from regulatory processes within the Commission. Here, we outline 7 general considerations and 6 additional considerations focused specifically on testing. These additional considerations are pursuant to Mass General Law 94G, Section 17A, which states that the Commission shall develop a research agenda in order to understand the social and economic trends of marijuana in the Commonwealth and to inform the Commission on the public health impacts of marijuana. These considerations also follow our first industry report published in 2020, which discussed the importance of analyzing testing data for both potency and purity when data would become available for us to analyze. Please obviously see the report for full considerations, but high level speaking, the 7 general considerations regarding research and data are as follows. Create additional guidance and FAQs for users analyzing open data to better understand its real-world data management, application, and metric limitations for use in research. Create an outline for the methods limitation of testing data. Collaborate with Metric to further clarify data entry processes and add moisture content to the tracking system. Work with Canada states, MDAR, and other Massachusetts state agencies and stakeholders to further understand the scope of hemp-derived cannabinoid use and make evidence-based changes as necessary. Increase data collection on equity provisions to allow for expanded understanding of current equity provision effectiveness and potential improvements. Work with Canada colleagues and state public safety entities to understand the scope of the unregulated cannabis market and help transition cannabis consumers to the regulated adult and medical use markets. Continue monitoring and evaluating patients' use, access, sustainability, and protections to safeguard the medical market and provide patient access to the needed medications that they rely on. Implement agency and statewide data collection mechanisms to assess differential trends among persons of color disproportionately impacted by drug policy enforcement. Next slide, please. So Massachusetts has created a complex testing infrastructure to ensure policies and practices are in alignment with current and emerging best practices of similar commodities and testing across the U.S. It remains critical that the cannabis policy follow the science and best practices to ensure public health and safety, especially for our patient populations who are more vulnerable. In the absence of nationally standardized practices or federal guidance, we present the following considerations specific to testing to ensure safety and accuracy. Work collaboratively with Canada regulators, scientists, experts, industry, and other stakeholders to guide evidence-based practices and policies in this constantly evolving policy and scientific landscape. Enhance and improve industry monitoring of seed-to-sale testing data to monitor any abnormalities in the data, and this is really important to do proactively. Monitor research related to total yeast and mold and other contaminate testing standards for the adult use and medical markets, as consumers in the adult use versus medical markets may have differential risks in cannabis consumption, and medical market products may merit stricter standards. Work with scientists, experts in the industry to regularly revisit the varying mandated testing components to ensure both industry cost effectiveness for licensees and public health and safety concerns for consumers and patients. To provide additional consumer protection as well as fidelity of industry compliance, the Commission may offer consumer education and off-the-shelf testing practices or a state-run standard testing laboratory. Standardized test results reporting practices to facilitate regulators and researchers' ability to analyze testing data and continue improving policy that just gains in the public health of our consumers. Next slide, please. So this concludes my presentation on the industry report. Thank you again for your time today, Acting Chair, Commissioners, Acting Executive Director, Chiefs, and all Commission staff. To my team, the research team, there are no other words that sum up the last 2+ years more than thank you. Alex, Braylon, Haley, and more recently, Victoria, thank you for being some of the most brilliant, collaborative, and mission-focused public servants, and collectively a team. I feel so lucky to be part of this team, nonetheless lead this team. Thank you. I tell you all the time that you're rock stars, and I mean it. It is not easy doing this work, and I remain so proud of the objective and critical work we do together. I owe so much gratitude to you and the former research staff. Shout out to Samantha, Olivia, and Jessica. So thank you to you all. Commissioner Roy, thank you for your continued interest in and support of research. I look forward to working with each one of you on how we can implement some of these things. And then one last reminder for commissioners, if you're going to have detailed questions, please send those to the research team so we can adequately answer those questions for you. And that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Greatly appreciate that report. Give me a lot of snapshots, given me a lot more notes than I think I had from my first reading of it and second reading of it. But I'll turn it over to my colleagues if they wish to offer any comments or thoughts. I have a couple of comments and thoughts, but I'll hold mine until the end. Commissioner Roy, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you again, Dr. Johnson. This was a highly informative presentation and report, and I have learned so much from it. And I feel it's also important we share this with the CAB and the subcommittee. So if Matt, Director Jill, if you're listening, I'm on the research subcommittee, I think they would find this extremely helpful. And I do have questions around testing that I will be around total yeast and mold. And so I will be sending those to you and your team. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. We look forward to getting those and adequately addressing each of your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Camargo?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Dr. Johnson, I think it's probably on my end, but you froze towards the end of your comments, but I'm sure, I think you were just reminding us to send in our questions and comments. But in any case, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Dr. Johnson. We're working on another report together as well, right? So this is a lot of work. And seeing the behind the scenes, but I first want to apologize to Victoria because I think I called her Catherine at the beginning. And I just heard you say Victoria at the end, so I want to apologize for that. But yes, thank you to your team. Thank you to everybody who made this possible. This is a commission report, right? It's led by the research team, but at the end of the day, this is a commission report that goes up to our legislators so that they can see and understand what's happening throughout the industry. I have tons of thoughts and questions, but I'm gonna save them for just mailing them. But I mean, emailing them in. But a few things that kind of just came to mind for me as someone that sits in the social justice chair, and I'm always asking, questions related to that and the lens with that. But you talked about, and this is not for you to answer; it's more of a comment for me. But you talked about $6 billion, right, between 2018 and 2024 in terms of the industry. And when I was looking at sort of the breakdown, I love the market saturation piece that you all put together. I really want to talk to you guys about that offline. I've said this before at public meeting, what do we do with this market saturation, right? We know it's there. We know it's real. I think you said it's 5.1 retailers per 100,000 people, right? And then when I think about those numbers, I think about how many of those retailers are economic empowerment, social equity, micro businesses, craft cooperators. I think about that. So I don't know if that's a hard breakdown to do for some kind of report like this, but it just makes me think of the bigger picture when it comes to, what we call our social equity licenses in this market saturation and in this, larger conversation. So I'll definitely send you some of those thoughts and questions. And then obviously, the product information that you gave us in terms of, the 62% decrease in the gram. I think the last one that you put up there was $5.42 per gram, right? And $153.72 per ounce. And you talked about in your comments, we've had a decrease possibly in folks that are coming from out of state to purchase the products, right? So those are all such great information. And I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having more in-depth conversation with you all now that we've, sort of looked it through and all that good stuff. But thank you, Dr. Johnson, to you and to your team. And just looking forward to kind of, finishing this up so that, we can send it to the state legislators and they can see all the work that we've done. And, I'll just say one last thing is that this is a reflection of, and I have the report in my hand here, it's a reflection of the work that we collectively at the commission have done. throughout the last years. And I'm in my 5th year as a commissioner, so I'm just very proud of this work. So thank you, Dr. Johnson, to your team. I also want to thank the legal team as well for working with you collaboratively and looking through this report. Again, it's coming from the commission, so I'm really grateful to them as well, and to everybody who put a piece into this report. So thank you so much, and thank you for my time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. I definitely wanted to have a clarifying question, because the report is finalized and it should be going to the legislature as is. So we can definitely talk to that offline.
Okay.
Because I would be very confused by that.
Okay.
But yes,
if I may,
this is a finalized document.
Yeah. Commissioner Stebbins, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Johnson, thank you for clarifying that asking question. I was under the impression that we were going to have the conversation today, send you some questions, and if there was any, like, any changes or comments or whatever, then we would do them. Get down. So that's a good clarifying question.
Yeah.
I do have like small comments, right? Like on some pages, and if we're gonna send in the PowerPoint as well, should we number the PowerPoint? Really small stuff, but I think it'll be good to talk it through today so that we're all on the same page. Because some of the questions or comments that, at least for me, that I may have, I don't know if it would cause an edit or not, but thank you for that clarifying question.
Yeah, this report was supposed to be out in December 2023. We've had a lot of delays, a lot of questions, concerns. Happy to answer anything, but this report is now 2 years overdue, and it should go to the legislature. And I'm happy to answer these questions. Those are questions to clarify, so you better understand it, and the audience better understands it, because I understand we're researchers, and sometimes we say things that may be not readily understandable. So happy to answer those. But this report, from my professional opinion and from my ethics as a researcher, is complete.
So that being said, Dr. Johnson, Chair Stebbins, you had said that we were gonna send comments, send questions or whatever, and then try to whatever, and then it would be out in March. So can you clarify that? Just because what Dr. Johnson is saying is I get it, but let's make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, no, we are. The report is final. The report and the considerations are final. The collaborative effort of the team to produce this final version. What we're allowed to do is come back and ask questions about the data. Those are due to research by, I believe, and Dr. Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong,
March 11th.
March 11th.
Yeah.
And they will do their best, again, depending on how detailed we go with the questions. They're hoping to have responses back to us by March 25th, and we will, we're going to post all of those questions and what the answers are. But in terms of the report is in its final form, with all the data and considerations that were, provided.
There's no more edits to the report, but we will provide as much information as education or, even meetings or clarifications to the research. But yes, the report is final, which will go public today, and then by March 25th. You'll have, your answers to those questions, and that will also go public in case anyone in the audience, has similar questions to you, because I understand that we are researchers, and sometimes, we say things in funny ways, and I completely understand that. So, Commissioner Roy, you had your hand up to you.
I have a comment back to.
Yep, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. I look at the chair for when to jump in and not, but I just wanted to comment on my comment from your comment. So thank you. Chairman, thank you for the clarification on that. So that'll also just help me in terms of my questions and comments that I do send. I don't have a, I know that we're not taking a vote per se, and I also know that this report is 2 years late. So I'm okay with how the report is. I think that, I guess, for purposes of conversation and for us as commissioners to get more educated on, some of this data and some of the finding, it's great. So I'm excited to just have the conversation. So thank you. That makes sense. And I'll definitely send in some questions and thoughts. And I think, for the future, it just makes me think, and that this is not this is not towards research, but, for us as commissioners, it just makes me think when we look at this industry report, how does equity really play a role in this in terms of licenses and questions that we have coming up in the future, just about license caps and our equity program and everything else. So this is really good, Dr. Johnson. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I look forward to, it being sent over to the State House at some point. And also for Matt Giancola, I would just say that I'm curious, what, if anything, will we be presenting on this at our State of Cannabis at the State House? And you don't have to answer it now, but it just, again, it's great information. And I think it's, we can talk about what, if anything, will this report, how will it play a role at the State of Cannabis? So thank you again.
And I look forward to continue to working with you and all commissioners to make sure that everyone at the commission, especially the commissioners, are comfortable and understand what's in the report and, what research is as an objective research, as an independent process. So I look forward to continuing to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Commissioner Roy, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, I was really excited to see the medical slides. And they are so timely because we have our public listening session on Thursday. So thank you to you and your team as we take a holistic view at our medical program. The trends are going in not a great direction, right? So we look at the sales from 2022 to 2023, we see a decrease. And I quickly ran the math because the 2024 numbers were just through April, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So what I did was I just did the math, and that would put another decrease. So we'd go from 225 million to about 199 million if we stay on track. Well, we might have the data. It might be already available, but I just kind of extrapolated it quickly. So that is trending. And, but we need to know this and we need to examine these numbers. And the patients, that's gone down. I think last month we had a slide where under 90,000 from at a peak. I remember when I first started with the commission, we were hovering over around 100,000. And so that this information helps us make informed decisions moving forward around the medical program. I know last year as treasurer, I asked for these numbers. In fiscal year 24, the commission subsidizes $720,000 in the plastic cards for patients, and we're happy to do that because then they don't pay for them. But how do we get to the next level with our program? Do we digitize? Like, what do we need to do to move this program forward? And the research subcommittee met this past week. We got some thoughtful recommendations coming down the pike, but this informs our decisions. So thank you so much. This was very, very timely. And my last comment is you're a nationally recognized researcher, and you have guest edited, national publications. And so, we are so lucky and fortunate to have you at the commission with your expertise and your team. And I'm just wondering, besides the legislature, do you envision this report being shared with your peers on any other level?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a great question. And thank you for all of that. So we, to satisfy our legislative mandate and research interests from the commission, we rewrite different reports for different groups. This is a legislative report, so it's more high level and just summarizing everything. But we do hope to plan to continue to, I'm associate editor at Research Society of Marijuana, to present this at Cannabis. We weren't able to do it last summer because of some concerns, but we hope to continue to do this work so we can collaborate with our stakeholders in different areas. I call us all different pieces of the puzzle, and you can't get too far with just one puzzle piece. You need all of our expertise in different ways to really come together, brainstorm, and find solutions moving forward. And I have to send accolades right back to you, Commissioner Roy, because I feel like you're in a really, we're in a really tough situation. We're trying to find how to do this, while policy is changing, while science is changing, without federal policy. And I just want to say thank you for being so solution focused, so collaborative, and I continue to really look forward to working with you and figuring out how we can merge forces and brains. And so yeah, we continue to do this work. We continue to kind of convene multiple different stakeholders, and we're going to continue to hopefully stand up the cannabis, the Center for Cannabis Research and Policy, which would allow different areas of expertise, because right now we're all social scientists, but maybe there's, you know, some hard scientists such as biologists or chemists or something that we can have offhand too. So again, and I know acting chair said in a recent meeting that he, you know, is interested in, you know, further collaborating. And I just look forward to this new leaf that we're doing at the commission, and really making sure that the research is involving all of the commission, you know, not just our external work, but that you're very much included in the work and the CCRP and everything moving forward, because that's always what we'd wanted.
Commissioner Roy, were you all done? You're all set?
All done. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Camargo, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Commissioner Roy, thank you for bringing up the medical aspect of this. I had it on my notes, but there's too much to kind of get into. But you're right, it's timely, right? So we're having this conversation on Thursday. I think that's great. So thank you for saying that. And yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo.
Thank you, commissioners. Well, the benefit of going last is I can just kind of check off what my what my other colleagues already covered. But I do want to emphasize Commissioner Roy's point about the medical program, and this kind of being the first time we're capturing this information about not only the patient population and why they're, what reasons they're using medical cannabis, but also, as Commissioner Roy pointed out, kind of a stagnating number of patients, declining sales. We know we kind of overlay that with, a number of MTCs that have closed. So for us to have this information, talk about timing being perfect, it's great to have in advance of the listening session on Thursday. A couple other just quick questions or points. Dr. Johnson, I appreciated as you were going through a lot of the report that you were acknowledging kind of where commission, not just this commission, but the previous commission, where policy changes had been made and how that might start to move data in another direction. So appreciate you acknowledging that. You talked about the next industry report being in 2027. I won't ask you now for what will be in that, but let me ask you about what your department kind of has on the horizon and some of the other things that you're working on currently.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As you know, we have been working on the center, creating the center to have more of a central place where all researchers, all stakeholders, everything can come together and we can all focus on solutions together, but in a research capacity and a data capacity. We are currently working on our abstracts for the Research Society of Marijuana, which will be in July. Very exciting. Also the CANRA external stakeholders, where I'm going to be leading the medical portion of that. I think I'm not quite too sure yet, but there's going to be a medical portion to that, as well as the research that's always included. And we are fully already working on, thanks to Alex and Graylin, the ICPS, the International Cannabis Policy Study, which actually hits most of our 94G Section 17 metrics. And this report, the industry report, meets the other half of those metrics. And so between those two reports, the industry report and the ICPS report, we successfully satisfy the mandate, along with the other metrics that we collaborate with other teams nationally and our CANRA colleagues across the US and Canada. And so it really is a great ability for me to understand some of the national concerns, and so I can bring them back to here, and so we can understand that this is a lot of the things that are going on. It says testing and hemp. It's not specific to Massachusetts. It's national, and more brains are better than one. And it's just nice to collaborate and know that we're not alone. And research can be really, really impactful to kind of see things in advance. We're all about projection and seeing the whole wide picture, not just things in silos. So we've put the pieces together, and I recommend people coming to our team as an objective sounding block, or just thinking through ideas. It's what my team is brilliant at doing, and what we really want to do is this mission to safely and equitably regulate cannabis for constituents and consumers.
A couple more points, if you'll allow me. The ICPS stuff is helping you to unlock a lot of the other
Metrics.
information metrics that's required in section 17. How can we take that ICPS info when it's ready and kind of, is there an opportunity to kind of make an addendum to this industry report as kind of a follow-up piece? How would you envision that?
They're two separate reports measuring two different things, you know, and so they help support each other, but they're two separate things. And so, and there's another point that I want to make. There's two metrics that we haven't been able to satisfy yet on 94G, and those are disciplinary actions in schools related to cannabis legalization, as well as the healthcare study. You know, and I hope you know in future years we'll be able to get the funding to help. You know, because those are studies that we would contract out with external vendors to do because they're more comprehensive. They entail a lot of work and multidisciplinary work. And so the intramural research is the research that we're able to do in-house with our expertise and background, which is the social sciences. And so we're doing this, the ICPS report and the industry report in alternating years. So we're continuously establishing, you know, processes as things change. So I don't see the benefit of combining them, but they can definitely inform each other. I know when we're drawing on abstracts for conferences and for presentations, we're usually taking data from both the ICPS report and the industry report for different reasons. And so the ICPS report will get at consumers is actually you know, our constituents. So are they using, where they're using? We can get at the illicit, the scope of the illicit market in the ICPS report. We can get a look at medicinal use versus recreational use versus youth and other uses. A lot of really detailed, important information that we can derive from the ICPS report. But I think both are equally critical, but distinct.
You mentioned CANRA. I know you're an active player in the CANRA organization, obviously on research, because there's a lot of patchwork work going on. There's a lot of collaboration work. The federal illegality kind of puts the brakes on any type of national study. But from your standpoint, and maybe Massachusetts has a chance to kind of toot our own horn here a little bit, can you give me a sense of how our research is aligning with what other states might be doing? Kind of where is Massachusetts kind of, you know, being a leader in some of the research as you work with colleagues around the country?
That's a great question, and thank you for raising that. I really applaud Representative Donahue and the Joint Committee for really establishing a robust research agenda inside a regulatory agency. Now, we know it hasn't been easy being researchers in a regulatory agency, but just the idea to have research consistently laying out or seeing what is coming up, what issues are coming up, public safety, economics, you know, we see it as it comes and we're able to do those objective data analyses, look for research, things like that. So I will say that it was our legislature that put in this really robust research agenda. So I do applaud them over and over again for doing that. And other states have then, because we've organically become this, you know, national leader where people come to us from all over, and because we do specifically applied cannabis research. It's not cannabis research we do, it's the applied research. It's policy and action. What are the issues? What's constantly arriving? How do we monitor this? What is the baseline? All of these different things that we do. So it really is a process in motion, but we are the first state that has this distinct research, objective research body within the regulating agency. But now we have New York, Maryland, Washington, we have even Illinois. These are all states that we've collaborated with for many years, and now they're creating their own research departments, and it's awesome to see them, you know, get up and running. It takes a little while, but to collaborate with them, I think, is going to be so helpful for all the industries moving forward. We're all in our patchwork designs with different statutes, different regulations, different enforcement of regulations, and then the fidelity of enforcement of those regulations makes research very complicated. The hemp concern made research really complicated. It being Schedule 1 really makes it really complicated. So we're trying to do the best that we can with what we have, what we're able to do, and the collaborators that we have nationally. So we've really set the stage, and to the inaugural commissioners, and the legislature, they really set up Massachusetts up to be leaders in research. We are the leaders in the research area for applied cannabis research.
Okay, thank you. One other question, just to not necessarily invite a response, but to invite you and your team to kind of put your thinking hat on, obviously, is we look ahead to social consumption in Massachusetts and what that might mean to the marketplace, into use, into sales. It would be interesting at some point to sit down and collaborate with your team and start to think through what should be all of those assessments that we should be looking at. Is, when we roll it out, how will we know we've had success, right? And,
Yes.
and there might be tremendous need to interact, with public safety, but just to plant that seed with you and your team and give it some thought. But again, thank you for this report. I have a lot of questions. I'm going to write them up. I'm going to try to hopefully sound scientifically smart when I present these to you, but
you don't need to.
Greatly appreciate the follow-up from your team. Commissioner Roy, you had another thought. Go ahead.
I do. I have 2 questions and a comment. So Dr. Johnson, I believe in the ISPS report that it didn't demonstrate significant cannibalization of the medical market from the adult use.
Yes.
But fast forward now, this is an every other year report. That might bear out something different as in other states. Because we're seeing this. So I'll be highly curious to see that. And I think you collaborate with the University of Waterloo on that.
Yes.
Who do you? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I'd be curious
Dr.
to
Hammond.
see what that bears out as in other states. It's showing a cannibalization. And also medical research. We have a research license type. We have licensee in the final, has a final license. So for future consideration, we'll see where that goes. Other states have kind of gone to the next level with medicinal type research. And so Massachusetts, I've said this many times, has the potential to be a global leader in that area. And we have folks that are doing, a great job, Dr. Gruber, one of them, who are doing things that are incredible. But we have the best universities and hospitals in the world and the infrastructure to be a global leader in this type of research. So future considerations may bring that in as well. And then thirdly, I'm just curious, you are a nationally recognized thought leader in this area. Will you or your team be presenting any posters at any symposiums or conferences coming up?
Yes, so we're going to be at, like I mentioned, CANRA. Next month, we're at it's virtual. So it's virtual in California, but looking at all the California schools that are doing cannabis research, and there's a lot of them. And we were invited for how do we do applied cannabis research, or how do we work together to ensure that we're doing, the academic work, but also the applied work. Is this feasible when it's implemented? Critical. We'll be at CANRA in June. We'll be at RSMJ, Research Society of Marijuana, in July, and the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists. We'll have 2 people at that as well this summer. It's really important to continue to collaborate, create these networks, and show the work that we're doing, because we get a lot of really good insights from these external stakeholders that can look at our research objectively and really give us insights about how to better our research, what things we may be missing. You disseminate your research to disseminate it, to also increase the literature that's out there, to inform evidence-based policy, but all to understand where your blind spots are. How do you improve? How do you get better? Research is all about improving. It's never done.
Thank
we
you.
Continue the work.
Commissioner Camargo, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Roy, before you mentioned what you mentioned right now for your comments right now, it had me thinking, so sort of two things. One is, Dr. Johnson, when do we start working on the next report? And I know obviously the data and the time has a role in it, but when do we start working on the next report?
As soon as the other one's done.
Okay, tomorrow. Okay, and I was just thinking, Commissioner Roy, because you always get me thinking when you ask your questions, but in the future, and I don't know, who of us will be here, but I'm wondering if we should, and this is for commissioners really, but if we should have a commissioner be part of the working group for that next industry report. I think, one, it'll be helpful to have commissioner insight or perspective, but also I know that this is a mandate and there's certain things that need to be in it, but I think also just having commissioner perspective would be helpful in terms of just the overall project. But yeah, just a thought. I don't know if you've done it like that in the past. I mean, I don't know if anybody was part of it now. I know I wasn't, or the first one, obviously we weren't here, but just a thought on that. And then the next CANRA thing. I'm glad that, again, Commissioner Roy, you asked about if we're going to present this anywhere or put it out there. But I think that was a really good question, and it's good to know that the next CANRA event is virtual. I haven't participated in a CANRA event yet, so that's actually good to hear, and hopefully hopefully we'll be invited to at least listen, especially since it's virtual. So that may be nice. But yeah, so those are just my thoughts. I don't know if commissioners, you have any thoughts on my recommendation for the future, but just FYI. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
That's a great point. And we actually, so I have always historically worked with commissioners on their expertise. Britta McBride, Shalene Title, Kay Doyle, and Jennifer Flanagan, the inaugural commissioners, based in their seats. And so when we were establishing the center, the CCRP, it was also have to have a steering committee that was supposed to be 2 commissioners, the executive director and me. And so we look forward to kind of reconvening that group so we can have the steering committee, and it would be the whole commission, leadership within the commission, all steering our research. And so for the past 7 years now, it's been a while, it's really been me navigating it, but it would be really great to have commission support, to get leadership guidance, to work together, to really have skin in the game from the very beginning. We are all about collaborating. So anytime, I fully embrace that.
Well, Doctor, you certainly have the opportunity to have 2 of us join the working group. So, but you certainly have the opportunity to reach out to all of us to get any thoughts, opinions, feedback, comments that we want to share. Debbie, I saw you, acting ED, I saw you turned on your camera. I'll invite you to ask a question or make any comments that you'd like.
I do have a question. Thank you so much, Acting Chair. And Dr. Johnson, thank you, and thank you, thank your team for doing such an excellent job in presenting this report, pulling it together. I really appreciate the time and effort that's put into it. And I know research has been a long road, and I'm looking forward to, working more with the research team, even in my capacity as a CPO, because I think research is going to be a critical component for the commission. My question for you is more on a broader perspective, because I think everybody knows I think more broadly and more into the future. So my question is really about the product life cycle. So we know every product has a life cycle, and market saturation is one of those cycles, right?
Yeah.
What does the current market saturation means for the Massachusetts industry?
So that is a much broader question. And so when we're talking about, a legislative report, which just gives you the data at a very high, there's no inferential statistics for that kind of analyses, we'd really have to go into a lot more specific nuance. More than happy to do that report. I've been talking about market saturation since 2019, I think, mainly in in reference to equity, because it's really hard for equity participants to get in once the market's saturated. So it's always been a big concern for me. But I would love to work with you on something, because we are realizing with this report at a high level, that certain areas, certain counties are definitely oversaturated where there isn't necessarily that saturation. And now we're losing patient equity access to, MTCs, which is a problem. So I would love to have this conversation. Let's please have this conversation and work together, because I think those are critical insights for not only the adult use industry, but the medicinal industry, and what we can do as regulators versus what the legislature can do in statute. So absolutely, but that is definitely a more in-depth conversation and more curtailed analyses, but ones we love to do.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, and I look forward to more data on that, because I think at some point there may be some sort of market correction that will be helpful for us as a commission in terms of planning for our future. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting ED. Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Again, Dr. Johnson, want to thank you. Want to thank your incredible team. Appreciate at the back of your presentation all the acknowledgments of other members of the CCC team who collaborated with you to help bring the report to a conclusion and a final product. So greatly appreciate all those folks from administration and finance and communications, EPCO, our DEI initiatives, and our legal team, as well as the many folks that you already mentioned. So greatly appreciate that acknowledgement. And again, thank those folks and everybody across the teams for their collaboration to produce this industry update and this industry report. So
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Commissioners, that was our the only agenda items that we have. I did not have any new business not anticipated at this time. Our next meeting date, obviously February 27th, we will be in person at our Union Station offices for our public meeting and listening session. We have a listening session on the medical program, and then we have some quick business to take care of with respect to licensing. So we'll do the listening session first, and on the back end take care of some commission business. Commissioner Camargo, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. May I make a comment about Thursday?
Of course. Go ahead.
Yes. So I just want to encourage folks to attend the medical program listening session this Thursday at our Worcester office. I hope to see people in person. It's hybrid, but I'm encouraging folks to to come in and testify. And our constituent service and medical program team will be there at the office, so folks can also meet and greet with them. I know that Kate Fisk has been working on a quick presentation for the public and the commissioners to just educate us a little more on the roles within the constituent services group, and for us to really understand what what they do. So I just want to encourage folks to do that, to come by or meet us online and testify. And I'm excited for it. I hope everybody is. And yeah, that's this Thursday. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Roy. Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you for that, Commissioner Camargo. I just kind of want to piggyback on that thought. I'm not sure if Government Affairs forwarded I know it's been posted publicly, but to Chairs Donahue and Gomez and all the members of the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy, if we can invite them, and if they're unable to attend, I know Chair Donahue has sent some of his legislative aides, because some of what impacts the medical program requires a legislative fix, if you will, for lack of a better term. So I just want to make sure that they're aware of this hearing, and they may want to send some of their staff or their team to hear directly from patients and stakeholders. So I just want to make sure we extended that.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. Commissioner Camargo.
No, I was just like giving Commissioner Roy thumbs up. Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, I'll do that too. Thumbs up, thumbs up. No, great point, great point. And thank you, Commissioner, and in the constituent services team and our chief of staff and communications and everybody else who's been working on this important quarterly listening session. That said, I will entertain a motion to pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, that we move into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation, because the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body. Do I have such a motion, Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Do I have a second, Commissioner Roy?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Motion made by Commissioner Camargo, seconded by Commissioner Roy. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will take a roll call vote. I would ask that when you make your vote, you verbally affirm that you are alone. Nobody can hear the deliberations. Commissioner Camargo.
I am alone and no one can hear my deliberations.
And how do you
Aye.
vote?
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Roy.
Aye, and I'm alone and no one can hear my deliberations.
Okay, and Commissioner Stebbins votes aye, and I can confirm that I am alone and no one can hear my deliberations. For the record, the individuals participating in this session will be the three commissioners, Acting Executive Director and Chief People Officer Deborah Hilton Creek, our General Counsel Kajal Chattopadhyay, our Deputy General Counsel Michael Baker, our Paralegal Avania Corrales Solis, and outside counsel from Morgan Brown and Joy Jacqueline Kugel. For the non-board members, can I just ask that you can verbally affirm that you are alone and no one can hear the deliberations? I'll start with the acting ED and Chief People Officer.
I can confirm that I'm alone and no one is present to hear these deliberations.
Okay, thank you. Our General Counsel.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I can confirm that I'm alone and nobody can hear my deliberations.
Okay. Our Deputy General Counsel.
I am alone and no one can hear the deliberations.
Okay. And our paralegal, Ivania Corrales Solis.
I am alone and no one can hear the deliberations.
Okay. As a reminder, the commission will not reconvene in open session. We will adjourn the meeting from the closed session. Thank you, commissioners. I'll see you in executive session. Why don't we take a 10-minute break and we'll reconvene in executive session at 11:50.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, team.